Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of NC-17. My name is Josh. Today with us we have a very special guest, actor, director, writer, awesome dude, very understanding. We have Byrne with us. How you doing today?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me, Josh.
Thanks for accepting the invite. Before we get into the movies and what you do in the entertainment industry, kind of the beginning stages of how you got into the industry.
Well, I was always interested as a kid in stories and film and all of that. And I also was involved in public access where we learned how to shoot, cut, write, direct, do all the things. But after doing all that, I really wanted to just do screenplays this was probably a little over 20 years ago. So I wrote a screenplay for a film called Small Fish, Small Pond, which is a drinking drama, kind of like Barfly. And I tried selling it through, standard means, finding an agent, this and that, and I had no luck. So I decided to go onto Hollywood sets as an extra, and thinking that while I was there, I could sell my script. Thinking I was the only person that ever thought of this idea. So I go on different sets. I was on Enemy of the State, Runaway Bride, Jag, Daring Capers. There were several other shows. But after a while, you once you've gotten on film in one movie and one TV, you've kind of done that. If you're not really looking to be an actor, you spend a lot of time just kind of sitting in rooms playing cards and waiting. And I just kind of decided that you know I wasn't going to be able to sell my script there, so that's when I moved into founding the company and moving forward like that.
Oh yeah. Uh, Being on a set of Hollywood movies and like just trying to get your name out there amongst no pun intended, small fish, big pond. No, no pun intended. But did not was it kind of like nerve wracking that you were trying to do this so hard, but then you found out everyone else was also doing the same thing.
Yeah, I just underestimated that everybody was doing it. I just assumed everybody on set was trying to be an actor. And most of the people that were there as extras, they were either looking just have fun and get paid because you got paid a stipend or whatever. It wasn't anything you were going to retire on, I'll put it that way. But or they were looking to sell their script. They weren't, very few of them were looking to get into acting.
Yeah. Uh, so in the beginning stages of creating your own company and putting your own stuff out there and everything like that, what kind of difficulties did you come into, like did you have to face to actually be able to pretty much get your foot all the way through the door?
Oh wow, a lot. There was a learning curve of learning how to use. I ended up going with Apple Final Cut and learning how to use that and build the DVDs. And there was also getting the equipment. So I would buy equipment as I got money from work. I would buy a piece of equipment here or there. Um, so we had a lot of financial and time logistic issues. And then when we did the first movie, which was a black and white noir called Taste of, this was the first feature called Taste of Desperation. It was a very difficult movie to do, and it took 6 years to finish it. There was an audio. I had to go back and resync the audio. And as I said, we had to wait to get equipment. All right, I'll have the money saved up in a few months and I can get that piece of equipment and we can shoot that part or whatever. It was a great learning experience looking back because kind of faced everything in that first movie.
Uh, and and once that first movie was done and you 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 had it out there and people were seeing it, what was your first reaction to like the first people seeing the film?
Well, the first people that saw it were friends, what I called cast and friends. I used to call the premieres cast and friends parties because that's really what they were. It was the cast brought their family and friends, and everyone there was open to black and white movies. As you well know, a lot of people aren't. I know people that will not watch black and white, and so you have to have a group of people that are open to that and understand noir and understand the language and all of that. And so that group was very receptive. We had several screenings for Taste of Desperation around the DC area. Um, and once again, we always had a very receptive audience for it.
All right. Uh, After making your first feature, going into your second feature, was the mindset was your mindset okay? I know how to do it, and I'm going to do it, or were there still more bumps in the road?
Oh, there were still more bumps in the road. What we do is each genre is different. So we kind of start over in some respects each time. And so when we did some shorts. We did a short and then we did Taste of Desperation. Then we did two more shorts and then we did this movie, uh, which was our fourth or fifth movie that we did. But we had a few shorts in there and then we stopped making shorts. Um, Now I've lost my train of thought. But oh, in terms of learning, yeah, because we were then doing that different genre, and so there was a whole new litany of problems, and we were shooting in a restaurant, and there were problems with like some of the refrigerator units that you didn't hear, but the mic heard it. And so then you had to go back and clean the audio. It was just, yeah, it was a lot. There was still a lot of learning really through all of them, but particularly through the first two or three.
uh, and through all these learning curves, did you find that after you learned how to kind of just control this, and then like fix this and do this, did you find that as the road continued to your next features, and just like everything else you've done since then, or do you still face some bumps in the road today?
Yeah, there's still some bumps, but yeah, like you said, most of the stuff has been cleared up. And, we have to kind of start over in terms of what the goal of each film is and that kind of thing. But there are certain things that you can learn in one film that can apply to all of them. Like, we got a different mic that has done a lot of help for us in terms of audio. The other mic was fine, but it wasn't really suited for what we were using it for. So just you clean up things as you have problems with them, and there's always going to be new problems that come up, individual to each movie. But there's fewer and fewer, honestly. There were fewer problems on this one, the last two really, than any of the others. So we must be doing something right.
Right. uh so with your directing style, because it varies, like you can shoot a comedy one month and then the next month you're shooting a horror, I mean, or a black and white movie. So with your directing styles, do you kind of like take influence, or like inspiration from people?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I take inspiration from people and from movies. I don't try to emulate them in a way that people necessarily know. I'll take little things. I'll give you an example in this movie. There's a scene at the end where my character's walking down between these two rows of trees, and it reminds me of the end of the movie. I always forget the name of it. The one with Orson Welles and Joseph Cotton where they were in Venice. I always forget the name of it. Anyway, the end of that movie where she was walking down the path with the trees. And when I saw those trees, I immediately thought of that movie. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have my character walking towards the end like she did. So I don't know if anybody would catch that. Which one? Oh. Uh, anyway, I don't know if anybody would catch that. I don't try to do overt things that people will catch, but in one of one, for example, that you saw, there were a lot of references to movies in that because that was a comedy, and we tend to do more references in comedy. In Blind Breakfast, there's very few references. It just wasn't really needed. So it's kind of if it's needed, we'll do it. If not, we won't.
uh, uh so when it comes to casting your movies, do you write certain roles for certain people, or do you just let everybody come in and audition, and whoever's best for the role gets the role?
Yeah, when I start the script process, there's generally some people that we have in mind to use, people that we've either not been able to get yet that we've been wanting to work with, or a lot of times we'll have favorites that have maybe been in multiple films, and it's like, oh, this would be a great role for them. And then the biggest category really is people that have been in one film and we want to bring them back for a second film, maybe in a bigger part. Uh, Usually I like to have people in mind for the big parts. The small day roles don't really matter. We can cast those later. And you're always going to have changes. You're always going to have people that can't or just aren't interested anymore, have gotten out of the business or are busy or have moved or have died. I mean, there's any number of things that have happened. And then generally what we do after that is the folks that we had planned to be in that can't be in it, we try to then go to new people if we can. Now, there's sometimes where that character's hard to cast, and it's like, you know what? Rather than going through the process of bringing a new person that may or may not work and going through all that, we know so and so has handled a role like this before. Let's just bring them back to do it. So sometimes those are the reasons
Uh,
that we make those decisions.
do you find like some actors and actresses reach out to you and say, "Hey, if you have a new film or something and you need an extra, or you need somebody that they're like coming to you and saying, "Hey, you can you take a chance on this?"
Yeah, people absolutely have done that. I've had people come to the screenings and they weren't in the movie and introduce themselves, and they've come and they've already showed some interest in the company by coming to the screening. And there've been several actors that have been cast based on that. And then I found out about them and I go back and look at their work, because that's one good thing now is there's all these channels, so it's easier to find people's work. And I could go watch somebody's work and figure out if they're going to work for the part or not. I don't really need to audition them for that role unless it's a very, very specific role where I want 100% new people in this one part. And I don't, in general, I can look at somebody's performance in two or three roles and figure out, okay, they're good at this type of thing. And, I could kind of figure out where to place them based on seeing them in previous work.
Uh, uh, so I do want to talk about one of one, but there's a couple other ones here I want to talk about too. Mismatch. Can you kind of give a description of that one and just kind of like what your thought process was making that movie?
Well, they had all these game shows, or not, they're not really game shows. There's some place between a game show and a reality show. And I think they're all terrible. But there was one that was actually funny. And it was like these dates that went wrong. And you could see what the person was thinking. And they were actually funny. And they always would pair people with people that weren't working. And I thought that was a really good idea. And I said, well, but what if you took it further to say that it was all planned that they weren't going to work out? I don't know if that's what they're trying to do on the TV show that I had seen, but in most cases it didn't work out. But in this one, they purposely, so if you have a person who's a minimalist, don't put them with a shopaholic, right? Those two people are not going to work. If somebody is an alcoholic and somebody doesn't drink at all, that might not work either. You know what I'm saying? Or somebody, so the idea of mismatch was all these people were purposely put together to fail because the audience wants to watch TV to feel better about themselves, not to watch people succeed. So it's kind of a joke on the TV system in a way.
Uh, it's funny you say the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic, right hand to God. So personal note, and it's a tirade. I'm sorry. So I used to drink a lot. My wife, never.
Okay.
So when we got together, it was definitely opposites attract. But I can say because of her, I'm actually 17 years sober. So
That's
that's
usually what happens. I mean, in a situation like that, it's like
uh,
if it's going to last, then one person's going to have to change, and the person that doesn't drink isn't going to be the one to change. It's going to be the one that drinks.
oh yeah.
So, good for you. I mean, I've been fortunate in my life that I can drink a couple beers and stop, but I know so many people that cannot. And I know a lot of people just had to flat out quit drinking. With some of my best friends have just, hey, I can't do it anymore. I can't, I don't know the limit. So,
Yeah.
good for you for finding that out and taking care of what you had to do.
I appreciate that. I credit my wife because if it wasn't for her, yeah, probably wouldn't be here today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your next film was Bigfoot.
Yes.
Uh, seems like a really fun movie. You want to give a little bit of detail with that one and just kind
Yeah, that might be a good time to introduce the other two people that are part of the company. So Absurd Productions Pictures, I founded it, and my wife Donna Byrne joined the company. She was in our first feature, Taste of Desperation. She wasn't in the first short, but she was in our second film, our first feature. And then several years later, she became one of our producers. And then on Bigfoot, well, actually, Matt had been in Mismatch, but on Bigfoot, Matt Burns, who you've interviewed before, who's an old friend of Donna's of mine, we met him on the Conroy Brooks film, uh, fourth of the five Gypsy vampire films, Final Bloodlust, I believe it was. So anyway, Matt was an actor in Mismatch, but then on Bigfoot he came on as a producer. So the three of us have been the main producers, and there's another guy named Marvin Kennedy. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but Marvin did everything. He shot, cut, and provided our music. So Bigfoot was to bring up Marvin. It was I knew I knew he was probably going to tell me this was the last film. He just couldn't physically do it anymore. So it was the last chance that we got to work together on film, and we both played Bigfoots at the beginning. We're the two pranking Bigfoots. Um, and the thing about that film was, I had these ideas about. I was a big fan of the show Finding Bigfoot, and I wanted to do a parody of it. And so the parody was that the Bigfoots were searching for people instead of the people searching for Bigfoots. And so rather than doing howls back and forth, they did this thing where they would yell back and forth, Dale Jr., Hank Jr., like who's your favorite Jr.? And it got into an argument, got the humans into an argument. And the Bigfoots were portrayed as being kind of practical jokers and kind of like big kids in the comedy part. And then at the end we did a horror part because I knew we had to have a horror part or I just didn't think there'd be that much interest in the movie. So in the horror part, we made the Bigfoots, like you would traditionally see them going and attacking people and this and that. But it was a very different movie. There's not a movie like it that I've ever seen anybody do. We've certainly never done anything like it. It truly is absurd, and most of our films are not. But that one actually is absurd, and it's a homage to B movies. We dedicated the movie to Conrad Brooks, which is where I met, or Don and I both met Marvin and Matt through Conrad. So and a lot of other people too that we've worked with over the years.
All right. Uh, Remnants. That was the first movie I seen that you had made. That so before we get into that, I don't think I've ever actually did a full review on it.
Okay.
Because on my channel I do review movies too. And I rate everything 1 to 10, 10 being best, one being worst. I purposely wanted to wait until I had you on to give you the rating, but anything above a 5 to me is good, and it got a strong 8.5 the first time. The second time I watched it, got a 9.
Oh, great. Wow,
And
that's good.
so the reason I gave it a 9 was it was a ghost story, but told differently. And then anybody who entered that basement, I felt sorry for whoever was going down there. uh, but for the people who haven't seen it, if you want to give a little bit of a synopsis on that one.
Yeah, once again with horror, in particular with horror, I really want to come in at something. I want to have a different approach. If I'm just going to do what everybody else has done, I don't see the reason for me to do it. You can go watch that other movie. You don't need to watch our movie. So one of the things that have fascinated me, and I'd had this conversation with several people, was about what are spirits? Are they things that are kept here? Are they a memory? Are they something in our mind that we is it unfinished business for us? And I just thought there was so much to explore versus having somebody going around, "Ooh," and that's fun. But once again, it's been done 1,000 times, and I thought we'd take a little bit more serious take on that one. There's not a lot of comedy in that movie. Oh, there's a little bit, but I really wanted to explore the idea that spirits are held here by either a location or a person, or there's something holding the spirit here. The spirit's not just here because they want to be. They're not here to exact revenge, and maybe they don't even know why they're here. And then we also had some good spirits that actually helped the people.
Okay.
Colleen's character in particular was one of those. But I want to explore that. I wanted to have some good ones and bad ones, and some had different powers and there was, despite it being a grim movie, there was a little bit of light at the end, if you know what I'm saying, without me giving that away.
Uh,
Um, and once again, that character had some power to be able to help the other character. I won't say who they were because I don't want to give it away. So
okay.
I think that we had a lot to explore there. And then the other thing was that a lot of people I know are really afraid of clowns, that they don't like clowns. They don't like looking at pictures of them or anything. And I was like, we gotta, people are so scared of clowns. I want to have a clown in a movie. And I felt like this is the one to have. And let's make him one of the ghosts that he figures out how to come back and continue his killing spree. Even after he's dead, he figures out how to get back from Remnant World. So Remnant World's kind of like purgatory. When you die, you go into this place and but you're held there
Yeah.
and you're stuck there, and unless you're pulled back by somebody, but he figures a way to get out and to come back. And then of
Yeah.
course that becomes a sub story too, is that we've got to send him back to where he came from. And but you can't just go to Remnant World, as you mentioned. Anybody that goes there, That's not good. Don't go there.
Oh yeah. The so out of all the characters, the ones that kind of like drew me in the most were, and I'm just gonna say the bar people,
Hmm.
because to me it seemed like it just seemed more natural and organic with, like, I mean, like the whole movie was awesome, but that the bar scenes was more, to me, felt more natural. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where the bar scene I think you're talking about is when Colleen kind of showed Hillary's character what happened to her.
Yes.
And so she got to see in flashback that she had died, and then of course she wasn't there. And yeah, that was a fun scene. That was important to that she showed her what happened to her so they could kind of move themselves forward. Colleen was trying, her character was trying to get to whatever her end was, and if she'll help people along the way, but what is my ultimate end? And once again, I don't want to give it away, but she found it.
Oh yeah. What I will say was like one of the driving forces, or like me being 100% entertained, is each person who could see them had a different way of doing it.
Right.
And to me, that was like, not only does each person bring a different layer because of their characters, but now another layer gets added because of their ability. And
Hmm.
to me, that was genius, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that was the other part that I didn't go into. The character at the beginning, his name's Snap. He's a wealthy businessman played by Jim Crut from Dawn of the Dead, helicopter zombie. He puts a group together, and that's exactly his intention, was to put a group together of people with different talents. They could, all but one of them could see spirits, but they could also do different things. They had different abilities, and he was very good at putting that group together. He was a believer, and he had money to put into. You in real life, there's people that have money that say, I want to send a submarine down the bottom of the ocean to prove that, to find the Loch Ness monster. I watched a thing about it a couple weeks ago. Is people that had money decided they're going to spend their money looking for the Loch Ness monster. So that's kind of what he was doing, is let's find these spirits and send them back, to where they belong. And
Uh,
these folks were able to do that.
yeah. Uh, so the next movie that, I'm not gonna lie, I started it at like 2 in the morning and I wound up falling asleep, so I still gotta go back and watch it all. But Brazen Impact.
Hmm.
If you get, yep, if you could give a brief synopsis on that one, and just like how the characters are, how they intertwine.
Yeah, with that one, there was a central bad guy, kind of like a Tony Soprano type of guy, but he was older, and he gets killed. And when he gets killed, there's a vying for power amongst all of not necessarily rivals, but the people that worked under him, that each thought they should be the one that should take over. And then meanwhile, on the other side, on the good side, the government and local and state and federal government were all working together to get, kind of like in Remnants, a group of people that could do all this stuff with spirits, to bring in a group of people with different skill sets in terms of fighting crime. One might be a sharpshooter, one might be a great an analyst or something like that. So they put this group together, and that group started going and trying to run through the people. So they just constantly intersect with each other, the good guys and the bad guys. There are some characters, my character in particular, that is kind of, he's bad, but is he not? He's not fully bad. He's kind of back and forth, and it's kind of getting back to the idea of the anti-hero that came out in the 60s and 70s, particularly in the 70s. But that someone, it doesn't have to necessarily just be a squeaky clean good guy, or a completely repulsive bad guy. That there can be gray areas between them. And a lot of times they're more interesting characters if they have those gray areas. There's more to explore for the actor, I think, and I think the audience too, to keep people guessing about, well, what is this character's ultimate motive? Some of them right away, and others you don't. So that was kind of the thought on that one.
Oh yeah. Uh, would you say that during the making of Brazen Impact, that there was like a certain scene you wrote, directed in a way, but it came off exceeding your expectations?
Yeah, there were several. Now, it's been so long, it's going to be hard for me to remember a specific one. Uh, I know one thing that did exceed expectation for us on that one was we were able to get some folks that we really, really wanted. We got Sharon Smith, who was Barnabas Collins' little sister in Dark Shadows. She was the little girl Sarah, and I watched that. They reran that when I was a kid, and I got to watch Dark Shadows, and so it was cool to get somebody from that. And Sharon's just a real nice person, and we were very fortunate to get her. It might end up, she hasn't done a movie since then, so it could be her last movie. I don't know. And then Ellen Udy from My Bloody Valentine, we were able to get her, and that scene really came across good. That might be one example where it exceeded because originally I had that written for the character's father, and we were going to shoot with another actor, and it didn't work out. And then Ellen had actually reached out to us and said, she was interested in getting in some non-horror stuff, and it turned out that she was going to be around. We could shoot with her, and I said, well, I could take it and change it. But it was funny in the story, the father kept saying, "Don't let your mother know. Don't let your mother know." And the reason then was that the mother would not agree that he was taking the kid into a life of crime. But I was like, no, no. Instead of the reason he said, "Don't let your mother know," is because the mother is really the strong-willed one. She's the one that said, "You've got to learn how to take care of yourself," and the dad was the one that was the softer one. So it really turned out to be better, I think, because the father was constantly worrying about his wife. Wife was not worried about the husband. She was like, "You're going to learn how to take care of yourself or you're gonna die. I mean, I'll be the one to kill you. I'm gonna let somebody else do it. You're either gonna be a killer or you're gonna die. I'm gonna make sure." And so that was a lot of fun. And then we also had we got Clark Fox back in that, who was in Taste of Desperation, and I'll talk about him at the end. But so we got a lot of people that we really wanted in that film, and it was a big. It took a while. It took a couple years. We were in the middle of COVID during that, and it was just a long. It was a hard production to get that done. That was probably the second hardest one behind Taste of Death. The crime ones are tougher in a lot of ways than the horror ones and the comedies.
Uh, Speaking of COVID, I've asked a couple people I've interviewed. So during COVID, like when the world was shut down, did you? Because Hollywood had to take a backseat to indie film because Hollywood they couldn't do nothing unless they were doing it remotely.
Yeah.
Independent film, and I've said this in a lot of interviews, and I'm probably gonna say it in every interview. Independent film has like literally leaps and bounds, literally is right at that finish line with Hollywood right now. And during COVID, did you find that because everything was shut down, things were easier for you to kind of just like write and kind of can figure out what you're going to do once everything starts lifting?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way of I'm probably the only I mean, I'm sure there are other people, but most people I had a lot that I could do here by myself during COVID. So cut the entire first two-thirds of the movie that we'd shot and realized that we were way over time. So I ended up taking the script and going in and cutting out, you always want to cut scenes before you shoot them because if you shoot a scene and then you cut it, your actors are not going to be happy and they shouldn't be. So it's better to cut the scene before you shoot it. Plus, you're doing all that work and effort, and then you're cutting it. So luckily, I knew, okay, the movie's running over. I need to cut two or three scenes out of it, and I cut those scenes out completely. And then we shot the rest of the movie, and it still ran, an hour and 45 minutes or 1 hour and 43 minutes, I believe. So it needed to be cut back, but I also spent that time. I remastered Remnants. I remastered Subconscious Reality. I just did a lot of things that had been long-term things, and we had Q and Amazon and Netflix, and we went through our queue like everybody else. But uh, in between that, I was working on trying to get all this other stuff. So yeah, when we finally were able to get back to shooting, because we couldn't shoot for at least 6 months at all. I mean, everything was shut down, and there was no getting together. So by the time we got back together, I'd already told everybody, okay, these three scenes are gone. Fortunately, no one person got cut. Everybody lost a scene, but everybody had another scene. So no one got lost in that. I tried really hard to not lose any actor. But yeah, we were much better prepared when it came time to get back in. We knew exactly what we were going to do and what we needed to do to finish. And and yeah, we were able to knock it out. So it was we got it done in a couple of years, and that was a struggle to get that done in 2 years because it's just a lot of work. These crime movies are a lot of work.
Oh yeah. We got about 8 minutes left.
Okay.
One of one. I haven't rated that one yet, neither. I'm gonna wait to rate it here. I'm gonna tell you. All right, I'll give you the rating. To me, because I'm just like I'm out there like that, it gets a 10.
Oh wow.
Just because every character in this movie belonged in this movie. So,
Hmm.
like everyone played so well off of each other, and every character just complimented the next character. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, well, damn, I can't. Like, there's no nitpicking.
That's
You know,
great.
that's just my opinion, though. So, uh, if you could give a brief synopsis on that one for people who haven't seen it, and then we'll get into Blood and Breakfast, which is something I want to see.
Yeah. So One of One is a dark comedy with elements of a stoner comedy in it, and it's about a guy, once again, another rich guy that's got more money than time and more money than stuff to do. So he decides, and he's an avid collector. He's got a warehouse full of stuff, and so he's like, "All right, I'm going to form a writers team." But instead of just having people send me a script or send me a story and I'll pick the best five, I'm going to make you jump through a bunch of hoops and I'm going to make you bring me an item. And that item better be something that it's either an invention or it's something I don't have. And so a lot of the participants make the mistake of bringing something fairly common and he's got everything. So the one of one is you've got to find a one of one. You've got to find something that only one exists. Otherwise, this guy's already got it, and he's not even going to look at your story. And so part of the underlying story about that is how unimportant the story is in so many of these things, particularly in Hollywood. And there's some in independent, but particularly in Hollywood, where it's like, well, we've got Brad Pitt, we don't need a story. We've got what whatever, whoever. We got all this CGI stuff in there and the story's the last thing that they care about. And so it was kind of a play on that, kind of making fun of how unimportant the story is to this guy who's like, oh, you've got a pocket knife with a picture of, Daniel Boone on it. You're hired. And he didn't even read the script, right?
Oh yeah. Uh, that was my first introduction to Kay Leahy. I hope
Leahy.
it's
Yeah.
Leahy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, awesome person. I actually had her on the show.
Yeah. We
Uh,
saw it. Yeah.
she, to me, her character, and I don't know if he did this purposely, but it seemed like she was 100% like the focal point of I need to get this done. This needs to be done, and it needs to get done quick. And I'll just say she succeeds, but I'm not going to say at what.
Right. Well,
uh,
she was the brains of the story, and her sister was the heart of the story. That's the way I like to describe them. She definitely drove the story. I mean, if it wasn't for her go-getter attitude, because you kind of follow the two sisters through the story, they would have never gone. Her other sister would have never gone. But
oh
she
yeah,
went because, okay, sis, you want me to come? I'll come with you.
oh
You
yeah.
know,
That I'm just like I said. Me and my wife sat down. I've seen it 3 times. She's watched it twice. So it's a really
that's
good
great.
movie.
That's wonderful. We really wanted, we try to do something different and we really want to do something different in comedy is comedy's tough because your timing has to be great. Your actor's timing has to be great. And we were just so fortunate with that cast where the timing between all of them was just so good. And, we worked really hard on getting those people. And that was a cast where you got to have certain people, they're not witty or fast enough with their dialogue. It's not going to work. So, yeah, that whole cast was great. And Kay got to come back in Blood and Breakfast because she did such a good job for us in One of One.
Oh yeah. Uh, I want to say my wife. She picked up on 3 different types of movies in there. She picked up on Dazed Confused a little bit,
Hmm.
Clerks,
I can see
and
that.
and then don't ask me why, but Mean Girls. I'm like, where the hell do you see Mean Girls? I was like,
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
there was,
there were some characters in there, particularly the last two that were sitting over there by the TV set that were naysayers about everything. And
yeah,
and I could see her thinking that from they were, even though one was a guy, they were the mean girls, the two of them. They had nothing good to say about anybody.
oh yeah. All right, we got about 4 minutes left.
Okay.
Let's get into Blood and Breakfast. If you could give a brief synopsis on that, don't without spoiling anything, because I actually still haven't seen it.
Yeah. So Bloody Breakfast is a horror whodunit, and what we wanted to do on this one was want to combine some of the fun of a whodunit where you try to guess who the person is with the idea of a slasher, where it's not just a, in a whodunit traditionally you find a body lay on the ground face down, you don't even, the kills aren't important. It's the mystery. But
Okay.
in a horror film, the kills are important, obviously. So a blending of slasher with whodunit, once again, to keep it fresh, because I don't want to get bored and I don't want to do something everybody else has done. I don't want to copy an 80s slasher film because everybody else has done it. You don't
Uh,
need us doing it. So that was the idea there. Once again, we got a wonderful cast with Nancy Ann Ritter from Scream and Beatrice Buckley from Nightmare on Elm Street, and Jim Crut is back in this one, and we also got Lisa Neild for the first time, Morgan Thompson. We got Mel Heflin back, George Stover back. So we had a really good cast for this one, and then a bunch of local people that I didn't name that are also wonderful. Everybody in this cast is wonderful, and they all work very well together. They all got along really well together in real life. And it's just a lot of fun. We've had a lot of fun with the screenings. We've got a screening coming up in Baltimore. I'll get the date wrong. April 26th, I think it is. And
yeah.
if your audience comes to absurdproductionspictures.com and click on the current events page, I'm keeping that current with listings of the film. We've screened in Ohio, we've screened twice in Pennsylvania and in Virginia. We've got another screening in Maryland, and we haven't announced it yet, but we got another screening coming up in Pennsylvania. And then I'm hoping we're going to have three or four more between now and August.
Uh, if you want to take a minute real quick and plug all your socials where they can see your movies, buy your movies, reach out to you and say, "Hey, can I be in a movie?" No, I'm just playing, but your socials.
Yeah, we have Absurd Productions Pictures on Facebook. That's a public site, so you guys come on out and join. The films, Blood and Breakfast is on the circuit now, so it's not available for streaming. But for some of the ones we talked about, uh, Raisin Impact is on Plex. It's on Cineverse. It's on like 7 channels. Remnants is on Plex. One of One is on Tubi. Several of them are also on Blossom. And then I did want to mention another film. This is through our sister company, One Life, One Earth Productions. We produce documentaries. We do fiction films on Absurd. And then here's our nonfiction. This is about Clark, the guy I said who was the villain in Taste of Desperation. He was also the boss in Brazen Impact. But in real life, he's an actor who went to school with Jim Morrison, and he studied with Andy Warhol, and he was a roommate with David Lynch, and he's got more stories to tell than anybody I know. And I just that was the idea here, was to get you in the room with him as he talks about his art, but he also talks about, it's kind of almost a history of the 60s and 70s,
Uh,
not just with art, but with pop culture. And this is available on Amazon Prime as a rental, Prime Video.
I
Clark
know what I'm.
Fox, Dragonfly on the Wall.
I know what I'm getting this Saturday. uh, Mark, it has been an honor and a privilege. Thank you for coming on. You're more than welcome on this show anytime. You have a home with NC-17. I normally say, even if it's to say I got a booger in my nose, well, fuck it, I just said it. But but no, you've been awesome, and thank you for coming on.
Josh, thanks for having us, and you've done a great job. You've had a lot of interviews, a lot of people I know, and you just done an amazing job with all these interviews. I don't know how you scheduled it all. I know it's hard. So hats off to you.
Oh, appreciate that. Trust me, it's not stopping anytime soon.
And we're happy to come back.
All right. All right, everybody. Until next time, stay NC-17.